Welcome to that spiritual, actual, factual answers to questions you're asking. You find them inside you, recite you, reciting the records of cash. We laughing, we drafting the passion to vary. It's time for that comedy, dramedy, all of the fanciest, catchiest acronyms. Listeners, listen, we traveling. Conscious is always unraveling. The reading you're having is mapping you back to your natural habitat. Abracadabra, it's magicless, passing it. To top it off, the host, all the classiest. Now, what were you asking for? All of the answers? What? All the answers.
Today is Wednesday.
I don't know.
I know, right?
I do know. I was just being silly. It is Wednesday. I want to thank you for messaging me earlier to say, hey, can we start a few minutes later? I was like, you mean Friday? And I looked at our messages and I was like, you meant today. So I just want to publicly acknowledge that 90% of the time, Katie's like, when are we? How are we? Who are we meeting? And then I'm like, God, Katie, read the message. And then today I was like, me. That was 100% me getting it all wrong. And you had it all right.
I had a lot of compassion for you because I make mistakes, and that's how you build compassion.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at a series of mistakes.
Well, I so regularly that I just have no judgment of people screwing it up.
Yeah.
At all.
I feel you.
Because I know what it is to have that particular handicap in life and be like, I try real hard and still fail. So like that's hard. Hold on, I'm having a weird, I'm going to pause for 1 second.
There's a delay on the video, so.
Hit record again. I don't know. Okay, what the hell were we talking about? Nothing.
Katie has left the building. I'm going to stop the recording. Resuming recording on everything. Hey, we are back. I had just told you how awesome you were for getting it right and me for not getting it right. And then you were saying how that builds compassion when you screw up.
Well, I really actually mean it. Like it reminds me of the 12-step thing of they talk about it's weakness, not strength that binds us. And they talk about having failed a lot in life teaches you to have a lot of compassion for people. Like pain and injuries makes you open-hearted because you know what pain and injury is like. And I guess I kind of love that in my own little world, that when people screw up the time, I have no problem with it because I'm just so understand what that is. And of course, for you, it's something other than, it's just, I have like a weird chronic thing about it. And for you, you're just being a person who sometimes does a thing. Like everybody screws up from time to time. But I just like having a lot of compassion for a thing.
I will say, and maybe there's something to look at this week.
Yeah.
Multiple iterations of that for me.
Huh.
I think it's because I scheduled a bunch of similar things and put them in my calendar, but also put them in my head and then didn't double check my calendar.
Uh-huh.
So like I had rescheduled an eye appointment for down the future. That doesn't matter. I scheduled a doctor's appointment yesterday morning, a video chat with my doctor. And then he messaged me, or he called me, and I happened to be looking at my phone, which was on Do Not Disturb, so it wasn't going to ring. Happened to glancing at my phone, and it rang. And I was like, who's this? And he was like, hey, can we meet a little early? And I was like, you mean from my 9:30 session? He's like, no, 8:50. And I was like, yep. So that was fine. And then later that same morning yesterday, I'm sitting around having a nice brunch with Denise, and I hadn't, and this is also rare, I always check my phone way too many times all the time. And I hadn't checked it in like an hour and a half. And I looked and there was a message saying, hey, we should meet actually 15 minutes earlier at 11 rather than 11:15. And I was like, do you mean 12? Oh, God. And it was like 5 minutes to 11 at that moment. So I was just like, bye. Denise cleaned up our brunch and I jumped in the car and raced off to work. And then today, same thing.
What's interesting about that is it's very interesting because it's a specific kind of messing up the time where it's a very specific kind of it and it's repeated each time.
Yeah, I thought it was this time.
Right.
It was actually this time that is earlier.
Yeah, that's like a specific, that's so interesting. My money's on there's an astrological component. We do have Uranus in retrograde in Taurus. So what does that mean? Upheavals, changes, sudden shocks, reorganizations, looking at things a new way. But in Taurus, which is about money, earth, house, things about the earth. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel very Uranus and Taurus-y. Uranus retrograde Taurus. I
really feel like I have to go back over every agreement I've made and double check it and make sure, A, that it's not just in my head wrong, but my calendar right, or it's not even in my calendar right because I got it in my head wrong the first time.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct it.
But there's like a document for each one. Like either it was the text message that you and I were exchanging that says, no, it was this time. Yep. And I wrote it in my calendar wrong, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be interesting to explore.
What's an area in your life where you're so broken or injured or have challenges that you empathize with other people's challenges in that area?
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's a hell of a question. I mean, I empathize with people's challenges in a lot of areas that I don't feel like are reflective of my own trauma necessarily. Like
Well, maybe it's not a trauma. Maybe it's just an area you're not strong in.
Right. But I'm strong in everything, Katie.
Yeah.
You don't understand. I'm a superhero.
I mean, maybe that's not part of your life track. Everybody's on a different track, you know?
Well, it could be. I mean, the thing that is repeatedly shown to me is that I still need to learn how to receive constantly. Like that is probably the most repeated message. It's come from you. It's come from Denise. It's come from everybody in my life constantly are saying like, you don't receive very well, do you?
Like, what's an example of that recently?
Like a lovely present or someone saying, I love you in a way that felt like very giving and me not knowing, oh, if I say it back, then it'll be making a promise. Or if I receive that gift, then there's a transaction being established and I can't live up to that.
Huh.
Or I don't deserve that. I wish I could give you a specific example of.
You've told me about this before, and I have a question. I have a clarification question. Is it if there's a contract established, I'll have to show up for something I don't want to have to commit to showing up for? Like I'm not ready to commit, or is it about something else? Not being able?
I think sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's a fear that I will fall short and disappoint. So it's not so much that, I mean, I'm willing to commit, but I'm not willing to promise that level of something because I will probably disappoint you.
Wow. That's so interesting. Where do you think that comes from?
That's a long silence because I'm like trying to like think it and I don't have I don't know. I mean, some of it comes from my more 9 nature, the aspect of me that is a lot like a 9, even though I'm a 3, but I'm definitely a 9 in retreat, Right. That I retreat to 9 in my less healthy self.
Oh, right.
And 9 being not very good at knowing that you matter. Like 9s annihilate themselves to the needs of everybody else. So
right.
And the unhealthy version of that looks like, oh, well, I obviously, my needs don't matter. My desires aren't part of the equation ever. So I can't receive good things. Like I can't want something or have an opinion.
So interesting.
I mean, I've worked like crazy on that, and that has been a huge part of my growth in the last 2 years for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Huge part of it.
Yeah.
The podcast, my therapist.
Yeah.
Yeah. My relationships with multiple people, really showing it to me.
Yeah. Denise,
Rami, everybody saying, hey, what do you think?
Yeah.
What do you want?
Yeah.
No, not it's okay if. I want to hear what you want.
Yeah. I really like the thing I had somebody teach me once. They were like, when you don't share what you want, it unhelps the rest of us figure out what we need.
Uh-huh.
And I had it backwards. I thought at that time, like, if I don't share what I want, it helps you understand what you want. But they were like, no, we need people to actually say, here's where I'm at, because it informs everything else. I don't know. I had a real journey with that too. Like,
yeah.
How would me having a need help anyone? And yet, for me, it's about authenticity because I have definition in my G center. And I can't remember if you have definition in your G center or not.
I have to go back and look. I mean, we all know how maddening it is when you're like, where would you like to go eat? And the other person is always saying,
I don't know.
I'm cool with anything.
Whatever. What do you want?
Yeah, that's maddening. I want your opinion.
Yeah.
Then I can disagree with it.
Right.
And if you say tacos, I'm like, oh, hell no, I don't want tacos. Good. Now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah. Now we have progress. Right. Exactly. It's like the idea of we have this bias towards frictionlessness as being good and friction being bad.
Yeah.
But friction is actually what makes everything happen.
That's where content exists of any kind.
Yeah, there's no relationship without friction. There's no sex. You can't have sex without friction.
Friction doesn't mean conflict either.
Yeah,
friction means things that can rub up against each other. Like
heat.
Right. If it's all just perfectly straight lubed down the line, it's just like you're just on a slip and slide and you're just like, I got nothing.
Right. There's no directing the raft. You're just down the river. Yeah. Yeah.
Which can be fun for a few minutes.
Yeah. I don't mind frictionlessness at all. I'm a big fan. I'm a 6'2" and I have that second line that blah, blah, blah. But I know that, relationally, there's no getting away with not having friction as much as I would like. And how do I know that? Because I tried and it did not work. Over and over.
This would be a really boring podcast if you were like, hey, how's it going? Pretty smooth, pretty good. How about you? It's good. It's just, things are going along.
All right, take care.
Do your work. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, exactly.
You're like, I have no work to do.
Yep. Speaking of doing work, hi, Squeezel. Did you just awaken from a nap? Did we wake you up? Oh, so sorry. She just sometimes emerges from slumber in my lap and looks at me like, why are you making sounds? I had an interesting thing happen with my, how I've got this equal amounts of terror for lightning and turbulence on airplanes thing.
Oh, yeah.
So I've been thinking It
used to just be airplanes, but then lightning was like, hey, don't forget me. I'm going to establish myself very firmly in your soul now.
Well, what's weird is that I had the reaction to lightning before I had these traumatic lightning experiences. But only since my mid-30s. And before that, nothing.
Same for airplanes?
Mm-hmm.
Airplanes developed mid-30s.
Yep. So what I really want to get into in this, talking about it right now, is I've had this idea in the past 2 weeks, I'd say, because my therapist was out of town, that I was like, I think weirdly, I need to talk with Elizabeth about the lightning thing. And the reason I hadn't been is because I had such a bias toward, I know that this is a stuck energy and it's going to have to move out energetically. So like therapy's not going to help.
Right.
But psychically, I just kept getting, you got to talk to Elizabeth, bring it up to Elizabeth, say it to Elizabeth. Okay. So I was like, all right, girl. So hi, this thing. I brought it. I said, I'm not sure we can do anything about it here, but like, here's the thing. She said one thing she goes, what if, because I told her all the things I've done for the past 10 years, trying to heal it, clear it, She goes, what if you lean into it? What if you go, all right, lightning, I'm going to kill me. Go ahead. Hit me now. I'll die. Let's feel into it. Like, what happens if you lean right into lightning? And I realized in that moment, I've been so afraid of it and the turbulence that I was like, whereas with every, other topic, I lean right into everything because that's how you clear an energy. You have to go to the center of the energy, meet it, and transmute it with the light of conscious awareness. That's just how healing works. But with this one thing, I was like, oh no, I can't. You're not going to, what? It's lightning. It's going to hit you in the head and get pain and death. So I was like, oh, duh. So I closed my eyes in the session and I imagined a bolt of lightning hitting me in the top of the head, which I was in full resistance to before that moment. And we did the thing that I would take any client through, which is like, okay, so I see it hitting. I'm okay. What do I notice in my body? Oh, I'm terrified and my belly is tight and my nervous system is tight. And I stayed with those tightnesses and then they started to loosen and everything started to shift just by being with it. Not even like transmitting divine light at it, just being with it. Then this whole other thing came up, which was, I was like, this is interesting. I'm aware of my mother's startle response. She always had a really high startle response. Like if her back was to you and you were talking to her already, so she knows you're standing behind her and then you touch her shoulder, she would jump and hit her head on the ceiling. She'd be so like, oh my God. I didn't know you were there. But she did know you were there. So she just had like a heightened startle response. So my eyes are closed and I'm imagining this lightning bolt and it's starting to shift. And now it's like not hitting my head and it's leaving my body. And I'm like, that's changing. And then all of a sudden I'm like aware of Valerie Rubin's startle response. So she said, yeah, so you may be holding her startle response for her. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. It lit up like a bell. So I stayed with that, cleared that just by being with it. And then all of a sudden I was like yawning and yawning and yawning, releasing a ton of energy. And then we were done. And like, I don't think I'm done with the whole thing yet, but it was a big piece. And it all happened just by my therapist, like being there, holding space while I faced it, felt into it, and did what I would do with any client on any topic. But it was very like 3-dimensional that turned into 5-dimensional without having to go to the records or go to the wherever, which was really kind of amazing. And also the fact that I was holding my mother's startle response, that was so fucking interesting because I've seen that kind of shit in healing sessions all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, you're carrying somebody else's this or that. But to just sit there, close my eyes and find that, and then for it to move, it was really affecting. Then I realized this morning, right before we got on here, I was like, well, what if I do the same thing for turbulence? So I closed my eyes. I was sitting on the couch and I just went like, okay, I'm in a plane. Now it's turbulent. What comes up in my body? Stayed with that feeling. Then I saw the plane do a full like nosedive into the ground. And I stayed with it and stayed with the terror. And I'm feeling the full drop and my stomach is rising. And then the plane like hits the earth in my imagination, nose first, explodes. I don't die. I'm there with my neck broken, in pain on the ground. Like I just faced the whole thing. And then that energy moved. So I think I'm just going to keep working with it like that and see if that completes it at some point. Because it was really cool to have it be so like, I don't want to say mundane, but mundane, integrated, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I love how we have to keep reminding ourselves also that like, I'm not saying that all modalities are equally effective or that, but that we have all these different angles at which to come at things. And sometimes they are like, no, it's got to be this, or it's got to be this, or it's got to be this. But sometimes it's just like, well, it could be this. You could use any of them because they're all kind of doing the same thing. Like if you're doing talk therapy with a good therapist who works with some like guided imagery or whatever, then that guided imagery is kind of like going into a meditation and bringing the light. Or if I started to spin off into a thought experiment. And then I was like, wait, listen to Katie's story. So I put a pin in that thought experiment, but now I'm back to it. And that is like, I wonder if like with neurofeedback, you know, you first thing you do is you run a protocol that gives you a baseline that measures all your brain waves and where they're at in balance with different quadrants of your brain and stuff. So you run this protocol and then you do some work and then you check to see if they've shifted, right? You basically read the brain waves again. And I'd be curious to do some parallel work. I either do some like neurofeedback work while you're monitoring that person's records or whatever. Like if you can perceive the shift that you're not directly working with them, they're working with a different therapist, but you're sitting there going, yep, nope, there it is. I saw it move. Yeah. Or vice versa, run the protocol, you do some sessions, run it again, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, it's different now. Like, because the brain waves are just a reflection of the soul wave, which is a reflection of the stuck energy, which is the chi, which is to get some fucking needle stuck in your neck and move that energy, which is actually just the light of the universe, Akasha. Like it's all one thing. It's kind of all one thing. It's just like different ways of getting at it. Absolutely. And what sort of like exactly what you're saying, but the opposite, but it's exactly what you're saying. What I was saying to Elizabeth was, it's interesting to me that this piece needs you and me doing this like this. Like this piece needs a relational dynamic with a therapist. And that's it in order for it to move. It doesn't need anything else. Right. It's like you need the right tool for the project you're working on. Right. But sometimes you try the tool and you're like, oh, that actually isn't the tool. Right. I thought it was, I could just do it with this spiritual tool. Yeah. Well, guess what? Therapy is a spiritual tool. Exactly. You know, like they're all. Yes. Yeah. a good therapist. You can have shitty therapists who can't do their job.
Correct. So to that, I don't know why this takes me here, but did we have we had questions, right, from people?
We have one that just came in recently that I thought was just a fun. It's not so much a direct question as a topic request.
From Jamie,
From
right?
Jamie, yeah.
The numbers, right?
And it's two things. I would love you to do an in-depth look at the meaning of numbers. You touch on them and you keep saying you'll get back to them, but then you run out of time. I'd just love to hear more about numbers and their significance.
Okay.
And then 2, I would also love to hear more about the portals that you've encountered and worked with and what is the purpose of their existence.
Oh, yeah.
Because she finds that fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, fucking A.
Numbers have been coming up. What was it yesterday? It was 555.
Mm-hmm.
We were getting a lot of, Denise and I were getting at 555. I can't remember even where the context was. And so we started looking that one up.
Oh, how cool.
Specifically 555, not just 5.
Uh-huh.
But 555 being an important use of that.
Let's come back to that. Watch Jamie be like, don't come back to it. Jesus Christ.
I said, do it.
But how's it going with Denise? I know you can't really, what are you going to say? Terrible.
Yeah.
She's listening. But
she's one of our most avid listeners, 100%. It's great.
But like, I mean, just in terms of like, since we talk about relational dynamics on here, like, how have you guys been? What's going on there? Everything's good?
Yeah, everything is great. We have every once in a while, like, I'll just keep saying it, that anytime a challenge of any sort comes up, it's usually not necessarily a challenge between us, but a challenge in one of our life that is then creating like a separate, sometimes it's between us. It's something that we think is happening between us. I'll just say that the lessons we both have learned, and like, I don't know if it's because of that relationship. It's always a combination. It's a combination of the relationship, the therapy, the podcast, the growth, all these things.
Yeah.
But we both just have such an ability to just go, hey, what the fuck is this? Here's what I'm hearing. Here's what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And occasionally doing it with a little, like, here's the thing I'm learning.
Yeah.
I can say, no, I don't like that. Have I ever done that? Have I ever done that?
No.
Or say, not, because it's always in the past been like, okay, I understand why you said it that way.
I know what you mean.
And I know you didn't mean it that, like couch it all in all the back off and not take any responsibility for it.
Totally.
But like recently, she said something with a little bit of stank on it about something that was going on. And I was able to say like, wow, I did not like that. That felt shitty to me.
Yeah.
And like the first reaction was a little bit of resistance. Well, but like within a minute.
Yeah.
Like first reaction's a little defensive. This is true for all of us for the most part. If you get called on something, you go, well, no.
No, you didn't. No.
That's not, but
shut up.
Like within a minute, it was like,
yeah,
that did have stink on it because I was feeling bad about that.
Yeah.
And you're right. That was unfair how I said it to you.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean I wasn't feeling a thing. So like both, I was able to get my hurt addressed, but then so was she, because she was able to say, well, actually, I am feeling something about that. So now we can talk about that. Because it doesn't, like, you don't get your needs addressed by saying something in a shitty way.
No.
Like, so you go past that and you go to why did you say that in a shitty way?
Right.
Oh, because you're hurting about that. Or that feels there's something on that. Great. Now let's talk about that.
Exactly. Well, that's, from my point of view, that's all that's required. Like, you have to like a person, have stuff in common, and be able to do that. And that's it.
That's it.
So there will never be a reason for you two to break up. The end when you're getting married.
We're good.
Can she be married to two people? Can we have polygamy?
Not technically speaking.
Damn it. What if
we could go to Burning Man and get like Playa married, which
I
is
like
its own thing.
It's happening like nowish, right? Real soon?
Yeah, she's leaving tomorrow.
Oh, you're not going?
I'm not going this year. I have rehearsals.
Oh, yeah, I got to ask you about that, too. We're getting to those numbers, Jamie. We're getting to the numbers.
Jamie will get to the numbers.
How's rehearsal going?
I don't know yet. We haven't started.
Oh, you haven't started.
We start on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday.
I'll just say this. We can't really talk about things that are happening, right? Can we talk about how it's actually going with that process, or not really? Because publicly it would be weird to do that.
There has been some challenges leading up to it, which caused some changes in casting and stuff like that. But I think ultimately it's now in a space where it's going to be able to go forward in a really good way.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And you have the same director?
Same director. It's all good. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. There were just some more, I would call them scheduling challenges, to be politic about it.
I got it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've heard some backstory, so I know some things, but
there's a little more on it, but I think ultimately everyone.
Stank? Is there stank on it?
Not for me anymore.
No stank.
No stank.
Damn it. I wanted a little gossip.
I do believe that everything that has occurred is for the best. Like, I feel good about it. Feels right. It doesn't feel wrong.
The stank was useful and appropriate stank, and now it's unstinky,
Right.
but it needed to be stinky to be freed from its
and
stank.
some of the responses that were a result of the stank helped to clear up the stank.
There you have it. See? Friction.
So that's the whole, everything happens for a reason. Friction.
And friction is good.
Right. Friction can cause change, and change is what we often need.
Well, change is the only constant.
And it is God, apparently, according to the parable of the sower, which you need to read. You need to read Parable of the Sower, and you need to see Everything Everywhere All at Once. You are a miserable human who have not seen that show. It's on streaming. You can just see it. Just put it on your big TV.
I am a bad person from hell. Okay, you know what I'm doing? Watch me. Watch me do this. I'm writing it in my place where I write things that I will remember to do. Please hold. Rami, I'm sorry. I love you. I value your opinion. See, I'm going to watch it tonight. Everything, Everywhere, etc. Watch the show that stole my title. Great.
That's what you need to grade.
Okay, now I'm going to go get my numbers thing. So, Jamie, we can talk about the numbers right now for you.
Jamie, calm down. We're going to talk
Take
about
a
numbers.
fucking breath, Jamie. Jesus. Right. Sit down and shut your pie hole.
Jamie.
I'll
Katie's
right
going
back.
to get it.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Rami here. So I have a hack that I developed during the pandemic. It's not a hack. It's a reframing, and it is giving me life. I have to be honest. I love this reframe so much. Okay, so let's say, I like procrastinating. Who doesn't, right? Let's say, for example, I need to do a thing like work on a script for an hour. Okay, let's say that's it. Work on a script for an hour. But I procrastinate. Let's say I procrastinate by cleaning my apartment for 2 hours before I get around to actually forcing my ass down to work on the script. Okay, so now if I think about this as procrastinating, then I'm like mad at myself for cleaning my apartment, which is silly because I like having a clean apartment. It would be fun. It would be more fun if instead of being mad at myself for cleaning my apartment, I was like, yay, this is great. I'm cleaning my apartment. So my reframe is that in order to work on the script for an hour, part of the event is the cleaning of the apartment. The event of working on the script for an hour includes, okay, first of all, working on the script for an hour is a 3-hour event. Not a 1-hour event. It's a 3-hour event. The first 2 hours are spent deep cleaning my apartment. And then, and only then, when that is complete and the joy of that has happened, then we move on to the second part of the event, which is actually working on the script for an hour. And so then I can enjoy the work because I'm like, yes, I am doing the work I set out to do, the work that includes this cleaning, instead of being fucking mad at myself. And I started calling that settling. So I'm not calling it procrastination anymore. I'm calling it settling. Like I don't know if that's really the right word, but that's all I've come up with. I don't even really understand why it's called that for me, but settling is part of the work. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that reframing. This has been Rami's Rules.
All right. Well, that deck dematerialized,
That's a bummer.
but I can give the gist.
All right.
I was hoping I could read it word for word because that would be more thorough. I literally can't think of a single other place. I went outside to my car for you, Jamie. This is tripping me out, actually. All right. Well, here's what I have to say. First thing is, there are a lot of different systems of what numbers mean, right? So if you resonate with numerology, I would say look at numerology. If you resonate with a thing a guy said on the internet, go with that. I have this.
I want to warn against that one just as a broad sweeping choice, but
That's obviously not ideal in general, but
that's where we get QAnon. Oh, I resonate with this guy on the internet.
That's true. But at the same time, if you resonate with it and then you try it out and it turns out to not be crazy, as opposed to like, whatever, you just believe it's different.
I know. Yeah, it's impossible to totally get that right. So we just.
Okay. So I had a day, I think I've told this story on here before, but I was in Benicia and I kept avoiding, I had just moved to Benicia and I kept avoiding the spiritual shop there because I was like, I don't need more spiritual shit. I am the spiritual thing. I don't need more books or decks or crystals. Plus I tend to, as an 8, resist everything at first and be like, no, I challenge this because I want to. So finally one day I'm at the coffee shop that's across the street from the place. And I'm telling you, I could not go in there. I was like, oh my God, I have to go in there right now. And it was like a magnet pulled me in there. And I'm looking around like, why am I in here? And then a magnet pulls me to the back of the store. And there's a bunch of decks. And a magnet inside me pulls me to this deck. And I pick up the deck and I'm like, I don't need another fucking deck. But I'm like, okay, Oracle Lightworker deck, fine. So I buy the deck because I wish I could explain it better than like, I was so powerfully pulled against my own will. So I get home later that day, I put the deck down. I have really no interest in looking at it. I go run some errands. And on that particular day, I'm like seeing the ones everywhere. The ones, 3 ones, 1 1, 2 ones, 6 ones. Everything's a fucking 1. I come back and I pull a 3-card spread, and the card right in the center, which is the present moment card, was a card called The Numbers. And it was a card that then you open the book that's associated with the card and it breaks down what all the numbers are.
Oh.
Shortly thereafter, I started to see the numbers all the time in the way that I talk about it now. And it so happens that in my world, this Lightworker Starseed Oracle deck book speaks to what I'm being shown through the numbers. So what I'm trying to say is that we're each on our own trip. So what you're being shown through the numbers may not be what I'm being shown through the numbers. So you have to find for yourself, what is the translation tool that resonates for you? In the same way that like, as a 6-2 in human design, I need certain information about how to make choices. You need different ones as a 1-3. There's distinctions here that I think are important to acknowledge. Okay. That being said, I think it's safe to say if you're a light worker and a starseed, meaning you have affiliations energetically on the soul level with a star nation, like the Sirians or the Pleiadians, the Arcturians, the Lemurians, the Lyrans, all those guys, these numbers tend to resonate for people who are like that. And I tend to serve that population with my soul's work. So as a Blu-ray, I'm here to activate and awaken the light workers. That's my job. So if you're a light worker, which Jamie is, or just a starseed, or both, which Jamie is, both, the ones, again, I really wish I had the deck because I want to read the whole thing, but the ones are about initiation and action and pulling the collective forward into love consciousness. So the 1 is like, let's get busy pulling people forward into love, awakening them, pulling them into conscious awareness. The 2s, in short essence, are about relational connection, communion, connecting, togetherness, friendship, sometimes love, romance. It's usually in my world about collaboration. Like I'll look at a 2 right when I'm about to get on a phone call with a good friend, or it'll be like, I'm about to go into a meeting and I'll see the 2s and I'll get the energy of, oh, treat this like a friend dynamic. And that will facilitate what the business deal is, et cetera, et cetera. The 3s are about teaching, publishing, advising, business relationships, energies like that. The 4s are an indication that angels are near and present, and they are quickening your energy. There's like a get things done energy that becomes available when angels are present. So it's like the angels are here, they're helping you do it. You suddenly have energy to do it. Use that energy because the angels are here. And also I like to tell people too, like, and for myself, like when the angels are there because the 4s are present, you can really talk to them and have an easier time hearing, quote, quote, their responses, whether the way you hear is visually or kinesthetically or through your ears or in your mind. The 5s are about letting go and surrendering to the all that is and going like, I often see 5s right before I'm about to teach a class. If I'm having anxiety, I'm like, gosh, I don't know what today's about. And then I'll see the 5s and it'll be like, my bad. Let it go. It's going to come through you. You are a channel. You don't have to have it all figured out ahead of time.
Is that also, I'm just remembering when I was reading, and again, multiple systems.
Yeah.
Like specifically 555, which was different than just 5, but 555 was about change or transition, I believe, is what it was sort of getting at.
The ones that the system I am resonating with is 5s in general are let go. There is a change and transition occurring, and let go, let it happen.
Got it.
So 3 5s would be a lot of that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. The 6s, in this system, they talk about how, if you see 666, culturally, we have this association with like the devil or like.
Right. The Antichrist.
Yeah. Satanic, whatever. But according to the star beings, it's actually the opposite of that. It's a spiritual number that suggests spiritual consciousness or higher mind consciousness would be helpful in this moment. Like take a spiritual perspective rather than like just take action. Or it's an indication that a spiritual perspective is being taken. Like the person in front of you is coming from a really spiritual place, or you yourself are coming from a spiritual place, or you would benefit from it, etc. No idea what the 7s are. Can't remember. I very rarely see the 7s, so I've rarely read about them. No idea what the 8s are about. And the 9 in this system, that is. And the 9 is also a very spiritual number, but the 9 is about like almost like obliteration into the unity and the oneness of the all that is. When the 9s are showing up, it's like annihilate all polarity. So like preferences, irrelevant. Me as separate from you, irrelevant. It's about unity, consciousness, and oneness. So if you see the 9s, you're being reminded to, oh God, I totally know what the 8s are. I just remembered what the 8s are. I totally know what they are. I see them all the time. It just went out of my brain. So that's the 9s. The 8s are about leadership with. I think I've probably talked about that on here before, where you're being reminded you're a leader, you're meant to lead, but you need to lead in the consciousness of with rather than leadership over, right? So power with and rather than power over. That's the vibration of the 8. And I can't remember what the 7 is.
What's the name of the deck again?
Good question. I think it's Light Worker Oracle deck. And if you show me the image, I'll be like, that's the one. I swear to God, as soon as we finish this day, I'm going to hang up the phone and all of a sudden there will be the deck sitting right in front of me. You know how that goes.
1111 Messages in Numbers. Is that the name of the card?
Yes, I think. Let me see the image. Can you show me the screen?
Is it the one by Alana Fairchild?
Oh, uh-huh. Yes.
And somewhere there should be more that gives you all the numbers, like on the back.
The book that comes with it. So those are the cards.
Oh, the book has, right. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not going to have unless there's a copy of the book. Right. All right. Well, anyway, I was hoping it would say book, but you got it.
Except for those pesky 7s. But once I find the deck, I'll come back and share it with everybody.
I want to talk about numbers a little more because I have 3D theories that I want to interlace with this. It's sort of a cart horse situation, like what's leading what. And I think we've talked about this sort of thing before, and I think you know probably where I'm already headed with this, but like you having, gotten this card, been drawn to this card very directly, very sort of obviously, almost like,
yeah,
no question, I'm drawn to this deck, and then that card was like, here, look at this card, learn this system of numbers. But then once you had those numbers in your consciousness,
am I creating it?
Yeah, whether it's creating or just observing, like that's what happens with, but that means that's still your inner guidance pointing out every time you see a 1, right? Because that's what you need right now.
Like, are you talking about the, what's that called? The frequency illusion. Bader-Meinhof. Is that what you're talking about?
A little bit, but I feel like Bader-Meinhof is a concept that's a little bit like dismissive of.
Yes.
It's saying, well, you're just seeing it because.
Right.
And I'm phrasing it a little differently than that. I'm thinking it's my whole thing is like, are the angels showing you the numbers, or are you just seeing the numbers because that's what you need to see right now?
Well, what's the difference?
Maybe none.
Well, here's what I would say. I love this conversation. I would say that it's all one thing. In other words, my consciousness, Katie Rubin's awareness, the consciousness of me, is unified with the field of the all that is.
Right.
I am the oracle now. So I get to see the numbers a lot because I'm of the vibration of that, and I've asked to be.
Yeah.
Now, we're all really on a certain level of consciousness. All of us are the oracle now. All of us are unified with the all that is. So if you start asking to be shown anything, you will. I have like this hyper dependent relationship on the cosmos where I go, show me all the time. So is there a separation between my consciousness showing me and the angels showing me?
Right.
I would argue that my consciousness is merged with the field of the angels. So the angels might be the ones that talk to me when the fours show up, but my consciousness is the one receiving it. My consciousness is the antenna all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, it's the framing, because I'm always resistant to like external forces or planetary determinism or something, some sort of other thing that is like up there, like throwing levers and like darts down and going, haha, look at this, do this. And that's just because that's the sort of almost linguistic, metaphorical way of us framing that idea. Mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to when it's just like, well, we're all part of the consciousness. And so it is you, but it is also you in you, the collective you. And also, like, I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, it helps me, at least, in terms of like to put it in a sense of like giving myself back a little of that agency as a member of the collective that is showing it to me, as opposed to some separated Godhead that is manipulating the fabric of the universe to show me a thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm just resistant to this sort of...
Right, because you're a liberal.
Because I'm a liberal.
That's how liberals are. They're like, I'm in charge. Don't tell me there's some God telling me what. And then non-liberals are like, you're not in charge? That's crazy. God's in charge. And then there's spiritualists in the middle who are like, it's both.
Right. And I prefer that. Like, I like to, I also love the idea of surrender to what is being given to you, which is an external, in a sense, idea. But I always want that external thing to be sprinkled with a little bit of participation.
Well, what if we think of it this way? What if it's like your higher self is already unified with what is?
Yeah.
So when you're being shown what is, it is your higher self is in agreement with that already. It's your ego personality here on this three-dimensional plane that needs to get with the program.
Right.
The ego is the one that, I had a teacher say, people always talk in the spiritual worlds about, my soul is here this time to learn this lesson. And this teacher was like, nah, your soul has all the lessons. Your soul's all set. Your ego personality is learning lessons so that ultimately it can dissolve into and become the soul. And then you don't have to embody anymore.
Yeah.
Come here, Bibbage. Come on. Are you going to disincarnate, Squeezel? Come over here. Come on.
Here's a framework that maybe I'm slightly more comfortable with, and my comfort is irrelevant, but, it's still the conversation, that it's not that they're printing ones on a billboard, whoever they are, printing ones on a billboard, obviously, but your attention is being directed to what is already there.
Correct.
And that...
my attention is pulled to only that which I need to see.
Right, because there are 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s everywhere all the time.
Right.
And it's right now I'm noticing, whether it's I'm noticing or I am being shown or I am seeing or I'm being shown, that's a polarity that does not actually exist.
Well, it does in the realm of duality exist.
Right. But
which is where we live.
yeah, but I am seeing, I think, is the same as I am being shown.
Sure. Yes, I would agree.
Yeah.
Because
My attention is being directed by my higher self, by my own psychological internal need to have this, or by the angels. Those are all one thing.
correct. In the field of oneness and unified consciousness theory, there is no separation anyway. So why worry about it?
Sometimes I love when our conversations hit a moment where I just feel like I should be taking a long toke afterwards. That moment felt a little like, for me, like, yeah, well, what if we are all that is? College.
Oh boy.
Because those conversations that you had in college while taking a long toke were an exploration heading towards this moment that we have now.
Totally. And let's be fair, part of why I think I hear you and it can feel that way is it's not really relevant to everybody's life. Like everyone on earth does not really need this fucking conversation. So a lot of people go to college, think about this shit for 5 minutes or don't, and then go like, I'm done smoking weed. Now I'm going to be a banker.
Right.
And their life is seated in the 3D, and that is what their life is. And I don't actually think that's less than not that or less evolved even.
Yeah.
I really understand these days, like everybody has their role. We all are playing our part on the stage of consciousness, and we like to think we choose the role, which I think is charming at this point, knowing what I know about human design and knowing what I know about just from my own life experience. I'm so convinced of a no-choice universe where we also have free will and where that paradox is something the mind can't understand, but the soul and the being can, that, to me, that's reality. But if that's not a reality you've been shown or you see, why would you buy that? And I have no need for people to buy it because it's not your trip. If it's not your trip, it's not your trip. I'm not a proselytizer.
Yeah, thank God. Yeah.
I just think that proselytizing is just not my jam. But even that, I'm kind of like, some people are.
That is some people's job.
Yeah.
Assignment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a part of what's been interesting in the last couple of years is getting so deep into human design. Like I'm in this like advanced class right now and I'm doing it one-on-one with my teacher friend, Amy, who was on here. We had Amy on a while ago. Remember, she was very beautiful. It was in Colorado. You were like, she's so beautiful. Oh my God. And she is.
I know who you're talking about.
She, I lost that train of thought. What was I going to say about that? Just like doing the deep dive stuff I'm doing in human design. I've seen so many things where, for example, I'll have a client show up in my practice where a couple of years ago, I might have said X, Y, or Z to them just as a coachy, spiritual teacher person. But now I don't say anything to anyone until I've looked at their chart. Because if I tell you as a manifester, for example, not to inform people what you're going to do because that's not spiritual, well, I'm not informed correctly about how you function. So it's been a whole new level of surrendering to what is, because what is very much determined by the lens you're looking through. And the lens you're looking through, I mean, we could take 10 years to get to know one another in sessions, or I can just look at your chart.
Interesting.
And it shows up so fast and so quickly in every person I work with. Like almost immediately now, I can tell if I'm working with a manifester because they have such a distinct frequency in how they talk that I'm like, let's pull your chart up real quick. And then it's like, look at that. They have the manifester channels. Oh my God. Anyway.
Question.
Yeah.
I have a question. Going back a little bit to the topic of like what your sort of assignment is or what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Some people are proselytizers and that is their jam and that is what they sort of quote should be doing.
It's more like it's what they are doing.
Is that to say that everything that anybody is doing at any given time is what they're supposed to be doing? Or is there a framework in which like you've been doing this and that is in conflict with your...
Yes.
So like and I wonder if my like reaction to some people...
Yes.
That are doing similar things.
Right.
Is like, oh, I don't want that, let's say a proselytizer, because I'm really in resistance to most proselytizers. Right? People who are like, believe this, do this, you need to come on board with this. I'm like, go fuck yourself.
Right.
Go away from me now.
Uh-huh.
except for those who I don't have that feeling to. They can say that to me and I can be like, oh, thanks for sharing. No, thank you. Or yes. And I'm wondering if some of that is an awareness of alignment. Like just be like that some people are doing a task that is out of alignment with their task.
Correct.
With their sort of soul assignment task.
I would agree.
Probably there's a shitload of people. I don't know about most people, but maybe most people.
Well, that's why we call it deconditioning. So the point of knowing your design is to decondition away from what is not in alignment for you.
Yeah.
So that you can have flow and ease and abundance and all the things we all want.
Yeah.
And serve your purpose and feel fulfilled and all that. So yes, I mean, I've done so many things in my life that have been fully not by my design until I stopped, until we're all constantly like shaping and reshaping and course correcting and recourse correcting toward like what is actually correct. Yeah.
I wish more people were course correcting more often.
Yeah. Well, and then that's the other question of like how many people don't even think about it and how many people don't give a shit and just go to sleep and sleepwalk through their reality. I mean, that's why we're going to have in 2061 a war that ends with the floods and whatever.
And then ends all wars afterwards.
Yeah.
No more war.
Because we got to get rid of those guys.
Yeah. And some of us as well.
Yeah. I mean, who knows?
There is no them. There is only all of us. That's not true.
I don't think so. I think what I mean is for me, it's like, I think you can be walking asleep and that has its consequences and its benefits. And it may not be where consciousness is heading the human race. Like that may not be where we're headed. We may be, if everything is headed toward waking up, I mean, but where is everything headed toward?
Right.
It could just be headed toward annihilation.
And I think some people out of alignment might just be in a more what we would call like a private hell, where it's like you're out of alignment, just fucks up your life.
Yeah.
But some people's out of alignment fucks up a lot of people's life.
But I guess you could argue that, I mean, I don't know, I'm saying this now as I think about it, but you could argue that if you're out of alignment, necessarily everything you're doing is not contributing toward consciousness.
Right.
Being conscious. Therefore, it's not really helpful to the collective to be out of alignment.
No, it's no matter what. Yeah, it's just maybe scale. I think I'm thinking more about scale. Like anybody being out of alignment is not great for everybody.
Yeah.
But it might be particularly bad for you, but only a little bit bad for everybody else. But some people's level of disalignment causes more torture or trauma.
Yeah. But then you look at someone like Trump, like here's a tricky one that I learned by looking at my mother's design. When I had a friend who was deep diving into human design before I was as deep in it as I am now. She was like, let's look at your mom's chart, because the more you tell me about her, the more I'm like, what's up here? We looked at her chart and it was like, wow. Like her chart was the chart of somebody who does control, manipulation, avoidance, harm, pressure.
It's like she has almost no choice in the matter.
It's like correct for her.
Yeah.
Like it is what it is. So then I think about that in terms of a Trump, right?
Right.
Like what if he's functioning exactly correctly for himself and he is a catalyst for great upheaval and then great transformation as a result?
Right. And then that means, though, that it's not. So, yeah, when we say like he's operating exactly as he should be, doesn't mean let him do it. It means that's triggering all the rest of you to do what you need to do in reaction to what he's doing.
Maybe.
Some of you, like if everything is as it should be, it also means you should continue to react or continue to respond.
Well, I don't believe in shoulds, so I don't know about that.
Okay, with the word should, it's like you, in the sense of, catalyzing you to do your thing in response,
or not,
in alignment with your mission.
Maybe, or not. In other words, I don't believe, I think we live in a no choice universe. So this is where we'll butt heads a little bit, I think, because if Trump is here and he's going to initiate the downfall of everything, I mean, I'm not going to stop him.
Right.
But that's me.
Right. You're not going to stop him because, well, right. But
somebody else might try.
Anything anybody does causes a reaction in everything around them.
Yes.
And that reaction is going to be socio-political. That reaction might just be personal, but your mother's behavior was appropriate possibly for you.
No, it was.
To drive you to exactly where you are today.
Exactly.
But you did things in reaction to get to where you are.
Right. So he's a catalyst for whatever he's a catalyst for.
Right. Which is causing other people to do things, both in alignment with him or in resistance to him.
Or you can take passenger consciousness and just watch it all. So I'm just saying there's yes or not, depending on what you choose.
Right. But we have no choice.
But that's the paradox. Like, I'm not even kidding.
I know.
That's the paradox that I'm saying I live with the understanding of, that most people hate, get mad about, are very triggered by. They go, you can't just say we have no choice, but we have choice. That's bullshit. Like, you're trying to cop out and take both sides. And all I can say is that both things are occurring.
Yeah.
Like, I can choose to touch this microphone right now or not touch the microphone right now. And this is a no choice universe where I am a 6'2", I'm not a 1'3", and certain things work out for me and certain things don't work out for me, no matter what I want and no matter how hard I try.
Right. And
so I can try to save the planet, and maybe it's going down because I am not the arbiter of what should happen. Judgment. Do I want to die with the planet as it hurtles into the sun? No, that's not my preference. But I'm certainly not the arbiter of what the planet's going to do.
Right.
But that takes a lot of surrender and a certain life path of like realizing certain things. I personally prefer this because it brings me a lot of peace, but not everybody's after peace. That's a big one for me that I've been like, oh, right. Most people aren't really that interested in internal peace. They're looking for something else. I don't know what. Everybody's looking for different shit. People don't. If you see it as a no choice universe where you also paradoxically have choice, there's a lot of peace in that for me. But not everybody's looking for fucking peace. It'd be very arrogant of me to say they should.
Yeah. Yeah. Should's a funny word, because should, one might say, well, you should try to do work that is in alignment with your mission, your assignment, or whatever the word we're using for that is. You should do that. And then what I mean by should in that context is like, well, it'd probably be in your best, in your highest good to do so. And which would also mean the highest good for everyone else around you.
Well, I would argue that it would create fulfillment for you if you're a generator, but that doesn't mean you should do it.
Yeah.
Do it if what you desire is fulfillment, or do it if what you desire as a projector is success. Do it if what you desire is communion and connection and love with other people. But I don't believe you should do it because it creates fulfillment or success or whatever. It's just a choice of what do you prefer? And do you believe you get to choose what you prefer?
Right.
Because should always comes back to right, wrong, polarity. Anyway.
No, I think I can grasp without being able to restate. I can grasp what you're saying, and I'm not in that much resistance to the duality thing, to the no, as long as the no choice universe also contains the choice. You know what I mean? Like, I get that. And that actually feels very empowering and weirdly relaxing too. I can find peace in that. It's the idea, and this is a dualistic idea, which is why I, earlier on in our conversations was so resistant. I made up the phrase planetary determinism for myself and how I hated it. Like, I hate planetary determinism. How dare it be that just because I happen to be born at that time and day, that lays out the path for my life for unavoidably. Yes, and it does and it doesn't. It both absolutely does. And of course you have free will to do with it what you will, and it affects and doesn't affect, and you choose things along the way. But wow, if you knew more about it, then
you might have an easier ride.
You might have an easier ride if that's what you want to have.
Correct. Maybe you don't give a fuck about an easier ride. Maybe all you want is to be right.
Well, that's true.
That's what most people want, is to be right, rather than to be in flow or to be successful or to be fulfilled.
One of my favorite things of recent is to realize It's not always true, but when I like to say, I love to be wrong. It's not always true that I love to be wrong because sometimes it hurts and it makes me feel embarrassed or ashamed or stupid or whatever. But boy, those moments when I can be wrong and go, oh my God, I was wrong. How, like, those are some of the most powerful and joyful moments in life, is to be able to accept wrongness without shame.
Yeah, that's the deal. Shame is the thing that stops people from being willing to be wrong.
Because then I'm actually pretty proud of myself, I'll be honest. Then my ego gets stroked by going, yeah, fuck yeah, you were wrong and you just learned something. God, you're a good human being who is willing to be wrong. You're so cool. Look at that. Yeah, look how advanced you are admitting you're wrong. And then my ego is stroked and I feel better.
Yeah. I mean, it brings up an interesting thing that I wonder a lot about like, I mean, I just answered the question as soon as I said the thing in my psyche. I just heard it. It's like we keep thinking this ego thing has to be annihilated completely, but I don't believe that, because self-esteem is very important for the individual human to do well in life and have a decently fluid time. If you have no self-esteem, that means you have no ego. If you have no ego, you can't choose what t-shirt to wear in the morning, let alone like show up to a job interview and do a good job and have money coming in and not be homeless. So like, we're not looking for the annihilation of the ego. We're looking for the integration of the ego and the surrender of the ego to the higher self, so that the ego can serve your better self or your higher purposes, or even at the minimum, so it can serve your survival.
Yeah. Like if you didn't have an ego, you couldn't laugh at a joke.
And you literally couldn't choose a t-shirt. You couldn't choose what to wear in the morning.
I don't know why when you were describing that, I saw like the Dalai Lama chuckling, right? Like he exists in his body and is a 3D. He's maybe an ascended master or whatever, but doesn't mean he doesn't have an ego. Of course he has an ego.
Well, and this speaks to, we were almost going to talk about this last time, but the movement from being a 7-centered being to the 9-centered being. The idea is this, that before 1781, for whatever fucking astrological planetary reasons, we were 7-centered beings, meaning the 7 chakras. And so all the religions and the philosophies and the teachings of the 7-centered being were moving the human being toward the ajna, or you could say the third eye, meaning the idea was to transcend the body, to move away from all the icky, sticky limitations of the body and move into expanded consciousness through the portal of your mind, essentially, to transcend time and space. Ra has this, received this idea that at that time, we actually shifted, we developed as a species into being 9-centered beings. So when you look at a human design chart, there's 9 centers instead of 7, which, by the way, we could talk about what's coming after the 9-centered being, and that's a very interesting conversation. Okay, so as we developed into the 9-centered beings, the idea is that the old philosophies and religions and teachings that have to do with transcending the body are irrelevant. And what's relevant is dropping into the body as deeply as possible, so that, we can listen to the conscious awareness we get through the 9 centers, which are in the body. So like, for example, if I have emotional definition, that's my authority. I can't follow my emotional authority if I'm transcending emotions, right? I can't listen to my sacral knowing if I've transcended the body. Then I'm just like in the oneness and seeing through the veils. But who cares? Because I don't have a life that works. Or who cares because I can't affect anything here? Or who cares because that's not what a 9-centered being is for? Now, obviously, that's a paradigm and you can buy it or not buy it. But I happen to resonate with it because while I like to transcend time and space to see things right in the beyond and pull them here, I do that for the purpose of people's here improving. I want your here to work. I want your life to work. I want you to live your dharma or your purpose or your fulfillment. I kind of care about people and want to help them be who they really are and have the success, fulfillment, ease, and flow of that. That's just my jam, right? So, but I believe that it happens through embodiment rather than through transcendence of the embodiment. So when you look at almost all of the teachings, including what the Dalai Lama was steeped in, right, of the 70s and the 60s and everything before it, a lot of it had to do with like awakening the ajna, opening the third eye and seeing through the veils, transcending time and space. It's not about the body. That's where you get all these spiritual teachers who are like being led around because they're so out of body and they're a saint and they live in the love for all humanity, but they can't like take a shit by themselves or whatever it is.
Right.
So yeah, so that.
But yeah, those people are still in a body and someone is still doing those things for them. So in a sense, they are still requiring embodiment, but it's just a little bit outside of themselves. So yeah, they have transcended, but they actually haven't transcended because
You still got a body.
full transcendence is a bit of a myth. And I think that maybe just theorizing, totally just me philosophically theorizing on that idea is like, those are necessary steps. It's like, well, everyone just lives so in their body, but in a not very enlightened way. So we need to get them up there, up to that ajna and transcend so they can start to expand their awareness of what is and what is possible out into a different realm. Great. Okay, we've pretty firmly established that concept now of the higher self, but we have to remember that it is also that higher realm is not separate. It is part of a system. And if we have left our system behind, that's a lie. So we now are returning. You're adding the nine-centered thing because you're bringing, and that ajna thing is part of that nine systems. It is just, but it is not the only goal. Is that sort of what you're saying?
I would say as a nine-centered being, we're trying to be embodied and awake as opposed to transcended and awake.
Right. Because transcendence implies a departure almost.
From the body.
Yeah, which means you're dead and you're no longer in that 3D realm, which is not true because you are in the body.
Yeah.
Dalai Lama is in his body. He is not actually fully transcended till he dies, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just talking shit here.
Well, you can be fully transcended in your consciousness, but not, how does that, I don't know. If it works for you, great. My path has been very like, I did so much transcendy stuff and it left me unsatisfied and unfulfilled. I was like, well, what was the point of this? And now I realize the fulfillment is in the correct functioning of this body on this earth while I'm here. Because I just noticed that I feel more fulfilled when the body is functioning correctly for itself on the earth.
Well, it's the paradox again of like, you know, I live in a 3D world in a body and I'm traveling to non-3D realms, but I'm still anchored into this body. So let's integrate them all. Yeah,
integration. That's what I'm after.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I did both. I did like all body and just instinct. And then I did transcendent oneness, bliss. And now I'm like, oh, it's a little bit of both. If you're after truth, because truth includes everything. If you want to be conscious, right? Consciousness includes everything and judges nothing. Consciousness includes everything. So like being conscious means just being aware of what is with no judgment of anything that is. And of course, I go unconscious all the time. Every time I judge something, I've literally gone unconscious. I've gone into my judgment mind. You know, that's dumb. I'm right. You're wrong. All that, you know. It's interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot, kind of shifting gears, but on this topic. I went through a period where I thought about this a bunch of years ago, and it's come back around lately where I'm like, theater and performance work, so much of it is about judgment. Thoughts? I could say more, but I'm curious if you know what I mean before I ramble on.
I mean, the simple fact that we have applause at the end of a show, that's a form of approval, which requires judgment. I like something, I don't like something. Do you mean the work itself or do you mean the product?
I think the work itself.
So more of the process?
Yeah, let me just see. This is so esoteric that when I think about starting to talk about it, it gets layers and layers of complicated before I even say words. Putting a pin in that for 1 second. Did we answer Jamie's second question? What is it?
She just wanted to hear more about the portals that you've been visiting and gone to. We've talked about them a lot, but
yeah,
I guess like just a whole.
What did she say about it? Could you read it again?
Yeah. I would also love to hear more about the portals that you've encountered and worked with and what is the purpose of their existence.
Okay. The purpose of their existence is, so Star being portals, for example, the purpose of their existence is to activate the frequencies of light that are aligned with that star nation for the sake of the development of the consciousness of the human collective. So if the Lemurians have a consciousness of empowered love, let's say, and there's a Lemurian portal, anybody standing in it is going to get activated into that frequency. And what activated means is you'll be triggered in all the parts of yourself that are not in conscious love in order to do your work around where you can be more in conscious love. So that's the purpose of the portals, is that the Lemurians look at Earth and go, man, these guys could use a little fucking love or a little awakening. They're trying to be conscious, but they don't have X, Y, and Z. Let's help them. Here's a portal, here's a portal, here's a portal. But oftentimes what they need is they need star seeds like us on Earth who can lock the portal into place from here. In other words, sometimes portals can't really function correctly without a light worker on Earth connecting the portal to the dimensional frequency of the portal off Earth, which is what a lot of the work I've done has been with portals. Like they had me open that portal on 72nd Street in Manhattan. If you remember that, Cass?
Yes.
Because they needed a light worker to be on the Earth end of, so it was almost like you could picture it like a ray of light coming down and then hovering above the ground. So I had to stand there to be the connector between the Earth and that ray of light so that it could anchor itself into the planet for the sake of consciousness awakening through the collective of humanity. That's what they're for. So you could also have a portal put here by a reptilian, where the reptilians are like, let's fuck shit up. We want to dominate and control Earth. So there's a reptilian portal over there that's going to be like, when you stand in it, you're going to feel like, yeah, I'm better than people and I'm smarter and everybody's stupid and I'm going to compete and win and hurt people and I don't care who's in my way. There are reptilian portals on this planet. So I hope that answers your question, Jamie.
Wouldn't it be interesting to find out if there was like a reptilian portal directly under every Trump tower that exists? There's one in Chicago and one in New York.
I would not be surprised.
Just right there. Just a funnel. Just a fucking...
I would not be surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, just to wrap this out, because we have 9 minutes. Nope, 6 minutes. Judgment theater.
Oh, yeah, the judgment theater thing.
Let me see if I can tease this out. I don't have this fully figured out, but lately when I think about doing theater, I go in and out of wanting to, as you witness. But when I think of storytelling, like when I did that show in New York recently where I wrote a solo show and performed it, I got to stay connected to conscious awareness through the middle of my body the whole time, which to me feels very peaceful and very not aligned with this or that. It's just very peaceful and centered and open. And I'm just standing there being myself, kind of like telling my experience. But when you take on a character or you're playing, like you have to like become a little bit like the anger. Let's say you're in a fighting scene with someone. You have to be angry and attack them or play the verb of attack or whatever theater language you want to use. But if I'm playing the verb of attack you, it's hard for me to stay in my center, like spacious and open and not angry. So you have to go to a lot of judgment in order to take on a state like that internally. And it feels bad to me now in my body. It doesn't mean like I think people shouldn't do it. It just means in my body, I feel bad doing it. But that's what makes you a good actor, is the degree to which you can really embody the energy.
There we go. There's that word I was about to say. Would you say you're embodying something?
Yeah.
Yeah. That, I mean, and that in itself is a struggle I think a lot of actors go through, especially actors who more thoroughly embody, which requires a level of sort of intense, you have to take on, you have to inhabit or embody, pull into in a sense, you're like pulling something into yourself, which can be dangerous, can feel, jarring, traumatic. So like especially if you're playing like a bad person, they always say, like if you're playing the villain, don't judge the villain,
right? But
see it from their point of view. So in a sense, there is a desire to remove judgment and operate from, in a sense, compassion. Would you say compassion is contrary to judgment?
No, but however, I would say this. I can be compassionate toward my character while she is choking someone to death.
Right.
And so if I'm choking someone to death, I'm still embodying choke them to death.
Uh-huh.
And I don't want to feel that. So that doesn't solve the problem. Having compassion for the villain doesn't take away the thing I'm talking about wanting to take away.
Right. In fact, it makes it worse because
then I fully become the
because
choking.
you have to receive it entirely.
Yeah. Because I'm not in judgment of it.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, there's an ongoing argument as to whether, like, let's really put huge quotes around this, whether method, which is bullshit concept anyway, method actors are actually dangerous and not to be trusted, because if they fully embody something, they are not, that can be a jarring and traumatic place for them to be, that you don't know that you can trust, because then they're operating from actual trauma. And we know that it's hard to be with people who are operating from trauma. So, like, I am a little bit of an advocate of being able to play at something sometimes more than playing fully embodied within it.
Interesting.
Because it's not in service of, I feel that theater cannot be in service of your desire to fully inhabit something. It has to be in service of what you are presenting. So what is the most effective way to show, tell, exhibit this story?
Right. As
an ensemble or as a solo person.
Right.
But, what do I want to reach the audience? And I think that, I have to fully inhabit it I don't feel that that's true. Because, sometimes if you actually were fully inhabiting it, you'd probably mumble and rage, and then the audience wouldn't hear a fucking thing you were saying, and it would be useless. It would be pointless. It would be you doing it for yourself only, and then that's pointless.
That's so interesting. I hear that sounds very 3 Enneagram to me in a great way.
Oh, yeah. It's about what you put out there, not what you feel.
Right. It's about achieving a thing as opposed to like being the thing.
Yeah. Achieving a goal of sharing this story, having a message, whatever it is you want to do with the audience. How you get there, I wouldn't say how you get there doesn't matter. It actually matters quite a bit, but how you get there needs to be in service of that and not in service of your own fulfillment.
Which I would also say points to your collective channels, the collective circuitry you have in your design. I have a ton of individual circuitry, so that makes it, I just have such a different orientation to what it all is. But I 100% do not think there's a right way. I think there's what we each do that gets you wherever you're fucking going, or not.
And let me be clear, like, my idea is not egoless at all. It's fully egoed. The idea that I'm perpetuating still has so much, it's so ego-based because it's about achieving that thing to be successful at it. I want the audience to get what is best for them to get. But in part of that equation is me then going, yeah, I did it, right? Now love me.
Yeah. Well, I'm back to like, I don't have the expectation of egolessness.
Exactly. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. Cool. I don't know. All of that. And a bag of chips. Everything, everywhere, all at once. All at once, you son of a bitch. All right. I'm watching it today.
I will believe that when I hear about it at our next episode here on alltheanswers.com. .net org.
.biz/edu. Let's all do our work. I love you.
I love you, Katie.
I love
let's talk again soon.
Sounds good.
Bye.
What are you asking for? All of the answers? Say what? All of the answers? Yeah, all the answers.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. We'd love to hear from you. Please email us with your questions so that we have questions to answer in the Akashic Records. Our email address is allanswerspod@gmail.com. That's allanswerspod@gmail.com. And if you'd like to find us on Facebook or Twitter, it's @allanswerspod, @allanswerspod. Thank you.
Burp.
You can cut that out if you want, Desmond.
Mixed and edited by Desmond McNeese for We Mixed It, LLC. Go to whatsoundsawesome.com.